Welcome to Spinning Back Clique. Each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a quick spin through the biggest headlines in the sport. This week, we've got the mayor of the fights here himself, Nolan King, as well as the boys from MMA Junkie Radio. It's Gorgeous George, and it goes. Let's just jump right into it, guys. It was a busy week in MMA this past week, but in terms of major titles, it was Sergio Pettis who stole the headlines, earning an impressive decision win over Juan Archuleta to claim the Bellator bantamweight title. Now, of course, his brother Anthony is a former UFC and WC champion. So let me ask you, who's got bragging rights at the family dinner table right now? Does Sergio's win stack up with Anthony's accomplishments at this point? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Let's start with you, Nolan.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I had a front row seat there to watch Sergio Pettis defeat Juan Archuleta, and he looked phenomenal. The Sergio Pettis we've been talking about, hoping to see for years, finally came to fruition and performed inside the cage. With all that put aside, though, I don't think you can necessarily say that he has the resume or accolades as his brother, Anthony Pettis. I mean, even if you just take the promotion out of it, I mean, Anthony Pettis was a WEC champion as well. He was a UFC champion who defended his title. So I think Sergio has a little bit more of a legacy to lay out for himself before he starts having that type of a before we start having that type of a conversation and putting him towards Anthony's level. But hey, I mean, you know, the body of work of his career, when all is said and done and we compare them, maybe it'll be a different story. But for now, I think Sergio's got it. What about you, George?
I would say that right now at the dinner table, Sergio's got bragging rights because he is the champ. You know, if somebody calls the Pettis house while they're having dinner and they say they want to talk to the champ, Serge gets up. You know, but if that same phone call comes in and we'll say somebody were to go, hey, the Hall of Fame wants to talk to you, then I think Anthony gets up. So it's different times. Anthony's overall resume is still, you know, more impressive, but Father Time's knocking on his door, whereas Sergio still has time. So we'll see in a few years, but right now it's Anthony Pettis. How about you guys?
Let's not talk about the dinner table, George. Let's talk about the breakfast table. Here's what happens when Sergio starts to pop off during breakfast. You sit there, Anthony, you listen, cool, calm, and collected, and when he's done talking, you pour yourself a bowl of Wheaties with your picture on it. I think that is the ultimate card right there to play. Look, man, you know, it's great what Sergio did. It's great for the family, both of them having titles. But Nolan and George are correct. I think he needs to do a little bit more before we can put him in that same class with Anthony Pettis, who won that championship belt, don't forget, with a lot of sharks in that pool.
I got to be honest, man. I almost felt guilty asking that question. I hate the fact that they get compared to each other, but leave it to the two brothers on this panel to have the greatest description of how things would go down. I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Meanwhile, in the UFC, Marina Rodriguez looked awfully impressive in a dominant decision win over Michelle Waterson. She appears to be a real force at strawweight right now, but that division is absolutely stacked. So lay it out. What's the proper booking for Marina next? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock again, and let's start with you, George.
You know, I think there's two routes that they can go because you got two former champions in Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who definitely was being linked with Marina on Saturday night. Her and Zhang Weili, I think the obvious booking is to rebook the two that took part in arguably the 2020 Fight of the Year. But you can also keep them separate and maybe match up the two Brazilians, Mackenzie Dern and Marina Rodriguez. Take your pick. I guess I would lean towards Rodriguez and JJ, and then have Zhang Weili versus Mackenzie Dern. So there's some options, because make it clear right now, Carlos Esparza and Jan, they have the next shot at Rose Namajunas. Goes, am I on the same wavelength as you?
Angela Hill. That's not my answer, but I'm just programmed. Anytime you say strawweight, you just say Angela Hill, and you should be correct. But that's not who I'm going with. I'm actually going to go with Claudia Gadelha. It's nothing against the picks that you had, George. I think those are good picks too. But I feel like in that fight, there were moments where Marina looked dominant, but she also seemed to have a few deficiencies. So I don't know that we need to rush her. I think Claudia Gadelha has the type of style that'll push her a little bit. I think there were moments where it seemed like Marina was maybe a little uncomfortable on the ground. So I think there still needs a little fine-tuning, and I think Claudia Gadelha is the perfect opponent, perfect placement for that. But I could be wrong. What do you think, Nolan?
I'm going to agree with one of George's choices. I think JJ's the way to go. I mean, I know Joanna has said in interviews that she's sitting back and she was waiting for the title picture to figure itself out so that then she could be the next title challenger. And while I respect everything that she's done and the great legacy that she's had in that awesome last fight she put on with Zhang Weili, I just think it's time to take a step back, just to regroup, just to rebuild, get your name back out there. And Marina Rodriguez, while no easy outing would be the opportunity for her to do that, I think it would be a great stylistic matchup for the fans. And I think it would set one of them up to really make the push and say, hey, I've earned this. I'm the next title challenger.
Yeah, guys, I got a co-sign. If I could do the matchmaking, it's Ioana and Jacek all day. I think stylistically that would be a blast. But I love Goes playing the odds. Just throw Angela Hill out there. You're probably right like 50% of the time. It's probably going to be Angela Hill. So good stuff. Guys, in the UFC's co-main event, of course, Alex Morono picked up a TKO win over MMA legend Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who said after the fact he's not about to let that be his final performance. He's not going out like that. Now, he said repeatedly he wants to get back down to 155 pounds. But what do you think, guys? I mean, are there any matchups that make sense? What would you like to see for Cowboy next? Even if you think maybe his time has come to an end. What do you think? Is there another fight out there? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock, break it down. What is next for the Cowboy? Goes, get it started.
I don't think his time has come to an end because he's still a competitive fighter. But the thing is, I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze here for Donald. Like, he needs maybe one more, maybe two, and then be done. But I definitely want him to do it in front of a crowd. I think that's something that he definitely deserves, to hear that walkout. So I think if we're going to give him a matchup, it's probably going to have to be a rematch, guys, because let's be honest, most guys in the division are rematches. He fought just about anybody. But I like a name, someone like Jim Miller. Like, I don't really think we have much to prove by throwing him up against these really top dogs. I like Jim Miller, that matchup. I think it's a little bit it's going to help Donald, but it's also going to help Jim because Jim is in a kind of a similar situation. So I'd like to see those two square off. What do you think, Nolan?
Yeah, I think you would have to do something like that to give him another kind of I don't want to say a legend, but a guy that's been around for a while. And looking at the rosters, I mean, at welterweight right now, there are a couple options. Matt Brown, maybe a rematch, or Court McGee, but both of those guys are booked. So if Donald can cut to 155, I do think there are some options. A name that jumped out to me, two guys, guys that hadn't fought before. Cerrone versus Joe Lozon. How about that possibility? There were a couple other names also at lightweight that were, possibilities, kind of the older vets. So if Clay Guida maybe. So if he can make that jump down and he can cut to 155 pounds, I think there are perfect retirement fight options. But like Go said, it has to be in front of a crowd. We need Cowboy to have a proper send-off. What do you think, George?
So I would say there's this grouping that I always think of, and it's part BMF and part just nasty, gritty veterans like Matt Browns of the world, Dan Hardy's of the world, the Diaz brothers, right? Even Lawler at this point, Robbie Lawler, just guys that have punched that clock over the years. They deserve to have their final fights, to have a say in their final fights. And I agree with what the guy said. You have to do it in front of a crowd. But I think Cerrone versus one of these cats, make it a catch weight, whatever they're comfortable with, 165, 170. Let's run it. One of those guys.
You know damn good and well Dana White ain't doing a 165-pound fight. So rule that out right now. But I will say this. Listen, you guys threw a lot of good names out there, but you hit the nail on the head. It's got to be in front of a crowd, man. The crowd favorite has to be able to do it in a proper manner. So we'll see what happens, guys. Here's one for you. One of the most discussed athletes in combat sports this past week was Jake Paul, believe it or not, following his hat-snatching incident ahead of Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather. Now, the type of interest that the Paul brothers generate, it really is massive. You see the numbers on the site. Yeah, we get comments and email every single day asking us, begging us, please don't cover these guys anymore. So just, guys, be honest here. What's your opinion? We could probably put 20 minutes on the clock, but we'll put 2 on the clock. We'll start it with you, Nolan.
Anybody that follows me know that I am a hardcore. I am not somebody that I don't disrespect the sport very often. I feel like I have a pretty level idea of everything that goes on. And with that being said, this answer might surprise people, but I do think that there is some sort of responsibility we have to coverage it. And the reason for that is that people are interested in it, whether or not we think something should be up on the website. If people enjoy it and if people talk about it and if people show us the interest, then it's something that I think is unavoidable on our part. It's about, putting out the things that people are interested in. And unfortunately, from my perspective, unfortunately, people are interested in the Paul brothers. So whether it is or isn't my cup of tea doesn't really matter. The audience seems to like it. And I mean, at the end of the day, there is part of fighting that's for entertainment. Jake Paul doesn't have to be the best fighter in the world for us to cover him.
At the core of me, guys, I know I'm just some dude that hosts a radio show, but at the core of me is a fan, and I'm interested, all right? That's why I click on these stories. That's why I refer to myself as a junkie, and I know a lot of other junkies that that are readers and listeners of our website. They like it. The numbers say so. All right. And so a few haters may not like it. Well, tough.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much about the Paul brothers as much as it is who they attach themselves to. There are people that we just find very intriguing, like a Ben Askren or a Floyd Mayweather. That's going down as one of the greatest boxers of all time. So it's a little bit of both. It's not all the Paul brothers. It's the people that they attach themselves to. It's my guilty pleasure. I always click and I read the story because I want to know what happened. I don't want to be left out. And you got to give the Paul brothers their due because I think they know that as well. So it's just kind of like when you go to the movie theater. If I'm going in to watch an action movie, I know there's dramas and horror movies going on over here. I don't tell them to stop showing it. I just don't watch it. And I can't complain, especially when people are coming out packed from those other movies. So I say we keep doing it.
Yeah, I used to be so defensive about what we cover and what we don't cover, what's good for the sport, right? But at the end of the day, it's just good, old-fashioned, crazy entertainment. And look, we're still bringing UFC, Bellator, ONE, PFL. You're still getting all the good stuff as well. If we weren't covering that stuff, I would get the complaints. Just let it be a little part of your day. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's talk about the big show this weekend. UFC 262 this weekend. The promotion's vacant. Lightweight titles on the line. It's always a bit of an odd situation when a title is vacated, right? Because you didn't really beat the champ to get it. So in your opinion, is the winner of this fight the true champion of the UFC's lightweight division? Or will Charles Oliveira or Michael Chandler have more to prove after they win this week? Tell me about that, and tell me if you got a prediction for who's going to be in that situation after this weekend. Who's going to win it? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. George, have at it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Robert Whittaker would have wanted to take it from GSP. You know, it's always nice when you have that moment, but sometimes these are the hands that are dealt. I think both guys, Oliveira going back to the end of last year and Chandler at the early part of this year, did enough to warrant the shot. Because remember, even if we believe what Dana White said that they needed to impress, their performances were definitely impressive over top-notch guys. They deserved their spot. So yes, deservingly, that belt will be placed around one of these cats this weekend, and I have no problem with it at all.
You know, I think 100% the real champion. It's like Khabib is gone, all right, guys? Look, these are two fighters that don't strike me as people who would have tried to avoid Khabib. They're game fighters. They'll fight anyone, anytime, any place. And you look at Oliveira's streak, you look at what Michael Chandler's done. So, yes, putting a belt around them, I do feel like they would be the true champion. But I do also feel like they have a little bit to prove afterwards because there are a lot of champions in the UFC's history. So now it comes down to defending your title and how much you can do that, the manner in which you do that. So there'll be a few doubters out there, but I think 100% that person will be the real champ.
Yeah, no question about it. I'm on board with you guys. I think if Khabib had gone somewhere else or had said, hey, maybe I'll come back in a little bit, maybe I'm just going to take a hiatus, then you could start having that debate. Like, well, there's somebody competing that's better, and, you know, this title doesn't mean as much. But Khabib's out of the picture. He's made that clear. The winner of Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira will be the best lightweight in the UFC and on a lot of people's plates in the world. So for me, I think that they both do have stuff to prove still. They want a legacy. They want to build it. But when it comes down to it on Saturday night, I predict Michael Chandler will walk away with a inside the distance victory to become the new UFC champion.
I like it. It's a big fight. It's a big fight. I'm looking forward to it. At least nothing else, they'll just start building on their own legacy. Fans back in the building in my home state of Texas, so I'm looking forward to it. LFA's in action. One championship is in action. Maybe the Paul brothers will do something we can talk about. There'll be stories next week. You know, we'll talk about it all on Spinning Back Clique.